What are the best approaches to effective environmental protection? My name's Danielle, and I conducted interviews with experts from across the environmental protection spectrum, federal and state agencies, nonprofits, and private businesses, to gather insights from decades worth of experience to the most effective ways to protect the environment. Only after conducting this research did I realize three major themes emerged across all sectors. The first and most common and passionate advice from this spectrum of experts is collaboration, the humanization of your opposition, incorporating a variety of expertise and resources from across the fields, active listening, acknowledging the validity of other perspectives and priorities, empowering from within because imposing doesn't work, framing your needs to fit with theirs, educating and being educated, finding commonalities, participating in productive discourse, and remembering that perfection is the enemy of good. Here are the experts breaking down what specifically collaboration looks like beyond just a kumbaya theory.
Conservation and environmental protection on a global scale, especially as it relates to climate change and biodiversity loss. This is everybody's problem. It's something that affects everybody throughout the entire planet, whether you live in the forest, whether you live in the wild, or whether you actually live in a city. This will affect us all. And so it actually is not something that anyone should be denied the right to be a part of in protecting the planet. Ultimately, at the end of the day, me as an American doesn't have the right to tell somebody whether they're a legal logger or not in an area to stop cutting the trees. We have to rely upon solutions that affect local people enough that they can actually take that initiative themselves. So at the end of the day, it's important for us to put ourselves in their shoes and not try and solve the issues that we think they need from the point of view of having fewer resources than us, but solving the issues that they might need from the actual problem in front of them. We need them to actually stop illegal logging. We need them to protect these areas. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to solve their problems. In Silicon Valley, there's a mantra that you're supposed to solve your own problem because you know your own problem's the best. And while that's very good advice, at the end of the day, if we're trying to address global warming, the most effective person who can do that is somebody trying to protect their own backyard in Brazil, sometimes solving their technological problems and their issues and being tech support to those people might be the fastest, cheapest way for someone like me to affect climate change.
It takes what's called relentless incrementalism. You know, we all want to see improvements overnight, but it's not going to happen. And when I talk to people in the US that are very frustrated by that, I say, take a look at our history before we had the Clean Water Act, or shortly after, before, the ball had really gotten rolling on it. You'll see the same things here, and look at it now. The most important thing is that you have to empower from within. So you can't be an outside entity and try to orchestrate what's going to happen. You see that a lot. You see people kind of wanting to impose or rescue. You have to empower from within. You have to clear those channels for people to have a voice and for people to have the means to make improvements themselves. And it's a team effort. It's not just citizens, it's legislators and a lot of others.
The best approach, in my experience, to effective environmental enforcement has been frequent public outreach and education. I've found that the more often we were out in the field dealing directly with lessees, dealing directly with company representatives, company attorneys, company accountants, anytime we could go directly to those people, they became a little bit more knowledgeable of the regulations. They were a little bit more willing to talk to us about what was going on in the industry. And they were a little bit more willing to share some of their challenges, because industry had their own challenges as well with environmental enforcement. They're not just dealing with a federal structure. They're dealing with a state structure and a county structure and sometimes a city-specific structure on top of us. It always helped if you had excellent communication and you were doing outreach to talk about what it was you wanted to see in the environment. If you want to be involved in environmental protection, I think you have to keep in mind that there are many perspectives within the realm of environmental protection, and it's going to have to be a middle ground. It can't be hard line, all or nothing. Anytime you can reach over to the other side and at least understand their perspective, you're going to be far more successful with your environmental enforcement action than if you just take a hard line and you're unwilling to listen to some of the concerns, and sometimes they're legitimate logistical concerns as well. And you need to understand all parts of the picture before you pursue an action.
Everything that is done top down cannot work because the governance itself is broken, is not functioning. We are promoting more and more a different level, what we call participatory approach. That means, first of all, bringing together the stakeholders or the local communities that have the ownership of their territory to protect it or to manage it in a different way. And we have done this by promoting dialogue, trust, and engagement, not only between us as WWF, but also among them and among different stakeholders group. I'm talking about, for example, the fishers together with the scientists, together with the local administrations or the tourist operators, that there is a lot of interaction and conflict. So by addressing the conflicts, by addressing the needs, to look on how to overcome those difficulties with the objective of having a long-term, planning approach or a long-term vision on how to manage the areas. And this is done at the very local level, but then this should go up and up. So by trying to put together the conservation sectors and the fishery sectors and other different stakeholders that should collaborate together. So if you bring together those practitioners that have the same problems all around the world, they can feel, first of all, not to be alone. They are not alone, facing a lot of problems every day, but they can also think in a more innovative way and can have, ideas that by being in the same bubble, it's very hard to have. What we have done that we see that is working is listen and understand what is the problem, what is the problem of the person or the group of the target group with whom we have to deal with, and trying to take into account those problems. Because if a fisherman is going all the time to fish and to overfish his own area, it's because he has no other choice. It's not because he wants to kill all the fish in the sea. So if you want to try to address the problem, you need to have this understanding, and you have to put yourself in his shoes or their shoes. And these create an approach that create a dialogue, and not the resolution of all the conflicts at all. And this is impossible, but at least finding common ground, finding common areas of collaboration where we can work together for a certain numbers of objectives.
In my experience, the best strategy for us as an agency for protecting the environment is to try initially to be cooperative with any entities that we see that are in violation. If we can educate them and get them to understand why they need to do some of these environmental protections, then they can go ahead and implement those. They can educate their employees, they can educate their neighbors, and they can do the right thing, and the environment gets protected.
What has been somewhat effective, but you have to be very patient in the process, is a collaborative approach. And so you have to bring various entities together that might not have the same priorities, but they're compatible priorities. We'll all have our limitations as agencies, but we'll also have certain opportunities that others don't have. And so if we can kind of come together, we can collaborate, and as a team, we can share information, we can cobble together funds from different funding sources, and can move forward on projects. So basically, really building collaboration. I think what's really essential in collaborating, it's not just a matter of saying, oh, we're gonna form a committee and we're gonna have meetings every month. There's a lot of behind it with respect to kind of philosophy and emotional intelligence. There's a lot of wisdom, and a lot of success in just listening to others. A lot of times we kind of just want to figuratively speaking, barge into the room and say, here's what our needs are, here's what our mission is, here's what our agency is charged with doing, and this is what we expect to see. But there's a lot of other things around that desire, right? And not everybody else in the room, that might not be their top priority. They might think it's a worthwhile priority, but it might not be their number one priority. Really, really listen. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fully understand sometimes. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree. It doesn't mean that you have to agree. Just try to understand how it all fits together. And as you do, you'll kind of see how priorities overlap. I'm going to give one example of that. So for a couple years, I worked for the Marine Corps. I worked for the Environmental Affairs Department. I was promoting generators that were solar powered. So this guy, that I was speaking to, he just thought, environmental protection was just some stupid hippie thing, that there wasn't any value in that, and just not an attitude that embraced environmental protection at all. But what I explained was that because these generators wouldn't be using fuel or much fuel, you wouldn't have as many convoys required to go out to these remote locations to replenish the fuel source, because you had the solar panels. They would go along predictable paths, and a lot of times they would be attacked, and many of them got hurt, and many of them got killed. So when I translated it to how many lives could be saved, then it spoke to him. Okay, so if I had kept trying to go at the environmental protection angle, if I was talking to him about climate change and greenhouse gas, I would have never gotten through to him. But I realized, just because I'm promoting it from that angle originally, that's not the only priority. And I obviously also prioritize human lives. And when that sort of dawned on me, and when we had the discussion with that being the focus, that finally spoke to him. But there are a lot of opportunities for that kind of thing. Just because your agency or your NGO prioritizes one particular issue, it doesn't mean it's incompatible with another agency that, their primary focus is something else.
My recommendation is always start with the return on investment that we can demonstrate through the existing structure. If we're trying to bring a new structure in, people are often just uncomfortable with change, anything that they don't know. So I would say look into the existing structures, designed for durability, longevity, and repairability. It will actually help us to reduce our operating cost. And that's what I meant as following the current framework, understand how the financial model works in a company, and pick the battle that is actually worth to fight for. And you sometimes don't even need to say, we should improve durability and repairability of our design for sustainability. Don't even say that. Just say, it's going to reduce cost. then you secretly add into your sustainability agenda in it. Sometimes when you bring in sustainability, people still have that feeling of it is just something good to have, maybe we don't need to pay too much attention to it. But if you are able to change the dialogue and figure out how to integrate sustainability initiatives with cost reduction initiatives, then you don't even need to say sustainability. You can get leadership attention immediately. And then you say, plus we get sustainability value out of it. And they're like, great, we can save money and work on sustainability.
I believe communication is the key. When we can sit and give different perspectives, it helps us. I learned something new. And then I apply what I learned. So be encouraged. The barriers in the past are not barriers of today. If we talk to the same people all the time, there's no advancement. Different perspective, that's when we get to share different points of view. What I find most important is find that common ground. We need a safe environment to live in, and we have to preserve the environment we have. Everyone wants that. So communication is very important. Talk to different people that are different from you, and hear what they're saying. And not argue, but I like to make suggestions. What if we did this? And then let them speak. Because when we do that, they realize they want the same thing we do.
There are 2 more best approaches to effective environmental protection that these experts dive into in our final video, part 4. Check it out.